So today's going to be kind of a hodgepodge. I'm out working in my garden today. I'm going to be adding some things to my composter. I was going to show you some onions and leeks that I planted. And then I'm going to be adding some bone meal and some different steer manure and chicken manure to all of my beds, just so that I can have things start getting ready for spring. So let me just show you some of the things I'm working on, and let's go. So this is my composter. It's a pretty big one. I was actually gifted this a couple of years ago. I had some friends who knew that I enjoyed gardening, and they were no longer doing it, so they actually delivered it to my house and brought me this great composter. So a lot of what I put in my garden throughout the spring and the summer is home composted materials from my yard, from my kitchen, all of that. So let me just show you some of the things that I put in my composter and show you how this works. So basically what I have is a small little composter I leave on my counter in the kitchen, and I just save all of my different scraps throughout sometimes it's just a couple of days, sometimes it's over a period of a couple of, maybe a week, but I save coffee grounds, vegetables, eggshells, all kinds of stuff. So put all these in, and that's it. So what I'm going to do today, I actually have a starter, and sometimes just because you have the same compost for a long time, I just like to add a little bit of this to my composter just to just kind of kickstart it for the spring. So I'm going to put a little handful of this in here. You don't need a whole lot. And that's it. I'm going to give this a couple of turns. And then when my husband has some lawn clippings and we have some wood clippings, some fertilizer, we'll go ahead and put that in the compost. So I just got the lid back on. All I do is give it a couple turns. So I just want to make sure that everything's mixed up, and then I'll start adding things for my next batch. So in this particular garden bed, I've already added the bone meal and the fertilizers, and all I'm going to be doing here is just creating some rows for my onion beds. So on the left side of the bed, the middle of the bed, you'll see the tulips that are just starting to come up. On the left side, I've got some garlic growing. I planted it about a week ago. And then on the right, I'm putting in a couple different kinds of onions. I've got a red onion and a brown onion. And then over towards the very back, I'm going to be planting some leeks. So these onions are very, very small, but I started them in the house. It's now February, let's see, today's February 12th. So in my zone 9B, it's a great time to put your onions in. It's still nice and cool, and it will be cool for a while until they're really well established. So as you can see, I've just kind of cut some rows with my gardening tool. I just kind of dip my onion right in the soil, cover it up with a little bit of dirt, and I try to keep these rows as straight as possible. So in this bed, although my other beds, I'm just getting the soil prepped for a couple months from now. Right now, I'm actually putting together some, things that are going to get a little bit of a head start. I think I'm also going to plant some peas towards the back of this bed and towards the back of the bed that's right behind me. In that bed, I've got some lettuce growing, but Anyway, I wanted to show you what I was working on. This was actually yesterday, but I started and it was so windy. You can see some of the shadows of the trees moving in the background, but as you can see, a lot of this is, it just got too windy and I ended up having to quit for the day. So, but I've got this whole bed I was working on. So these are the onions that I planted yesterday. You can see they're really, really, really small, but they're looking good. And I've got some tulips starting to come up in the middle of the garden, and then I've also got some garlic that's starting to come up, as you can see. I've got some Swiss chard on the end. This is my lettuce bed, and I've got some rutabagas growing here and just several different lettuces that I've been using for the last month. Now in this bed, I've put some bone meal down on one half of my garden, and I'm going to be putting some additional bone meal down. And then my goal is to put a bag of, I think I was putting steer manure in this particular bed. But basically, I actually have a rototiller. I don't usually disturb the soil that much. I wouldn't say that I'm, somebody who just layers layer on layer of, soil and that kind of thing. But I do like to just kind of work this a little bit into the top of the soil and try to keep my worms and things like that under control. So as you can see, I'm just putting a generous amount of bone meal down. Next, I'm going to take a bag of the fertilizer and I'm going to, distribute that all throughout the box. So this is the steer manure. I have 3 bags of steer manure and 3 bags of chicken manure. And I've got 2 existing beds which are already planted out, and then these I'm getting ready for my spring garden. I like to do this work usually a couple of months ahead of time, just so that I can keep working the soil, and as I'm building the compost up, I'm going to be adding compost and all kinds of things to the soil. So here I'm just going along and emptying some of this fertilizer, trying to get it even all along the bed. You can tell I'm getting older because even like a bag of fertilizer, I used to just be able to throw this down and everything was so easy. Now it just seems like everything's getting so much harder with time. But anyway, I just kind of plug around at my own pace, and I enjoy working in the garden, so it's kind of a labor of love. But as you can see, I'm just trying to even it out the best I can. Now I've got a lot of weeds on the ground. You're probably wondering, oh my gosh, look at these weeds. Are they just going crazy? Well, my thought is that, I've pretty much had just a dirt soil for the last 5 years. But I've decided this year I think I'm going to put some kind of rock and pavers down. So I'm not really concerned with the weeds this year. I will take all those out in the next coming weeks, and as soon as I decide what I want to put down, I'm also going to be replacing these existing drip sprinklers. They're really tiny. I've got like 8 of them on each bed, and I'm going to be putting in an actual drip irrigation in each one of my beds probably within the next month. So it's kind of a work in progress, but I just feel like I could get a deeper, better watering from my plants. And I also would just really like to be able to, have that available and And I'd also like to clean up the floor of the garden. I mean, the beds are great, and I do get tons of vegetables, and they're just great for, for my homestead and for my food storage. They just do a great job. But what I really need is to be able to have a cleaner look, a more manageable look. It's really hard when you're trying to take care of 8 beds to also have to worry about all the weeds that grow on the ground. And I've tried all kinds of different things. I'm an organic gardener, so I don't want to spray anything. I don't want to use any kind of pesticides in the beds or out of the beds. So right now I'm just going to leave everything as it is, and in the next month you'll be seeing, I think, some changes that are going to come up in my garden. So right now I have this funny looking tool. Like I said, I have a rototiller, but I only use that about every 4 or 5 years. This little tool is so handy. It goes down about 3 inches, and it just basically allows me to turn in this soil, the fertilizer and the steer manure and the bone meal. So it does a really good job of just kind of mixing up the dirt and, bringing it together. And so I really just try to, go through each one of the beds, and I take my time. I'm not in a big hurry. I want this to have time to rest and worms to get in it and all kinds of things over the next couple of months. So right now I call this dressing my soil for spring, but it's just one of the things that I do. So I'm going to finish up this bed, and I think that you've probably seen enough of this, but after I was done with this, I actually did 2 more beds, and then I'm going to finish up the other 3 tomorrow. So thank you for watching. If you like this video, I hope that you'll stay tuned for some other episodes in my gardening adventures. This time of the year, after it's kind of sat through the winter, everything in the garden always looks this way. It just looks kind of junky and messy, and it's funny because every single week now, while I'm working on the different projects, this garden will start to breathe. It's going to start to come alive, and this is like the funnest time because it's not too hot. You notice I'm actually wearing a sweater out here. It's really comfortable, and there's usually a breeze in my garden. I've got about 5 sets of wind chimes and also a couple of bird feeders. And actually, they're not bird feeders, they're hummingbird feeders. But it's just a lot of fun. It brings me a lot of joy, and I also get a lot of food out of the garden. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you're interested, and feel free to share this video. And I hope it's of help to you if you're thinking of gardening or you have an existing garden. I hope this is something that helps you as well. So thank you, and have a great day.